Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Invested podcast. We're actually here with Nick today, one of the co-founders of the video game group here at Gerber Kawasaki.
Hey Brett, thank you for having me today. I'm excited. As he mentioned, I am one of the co-founders of the video game group here and excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you and kind of break down the industry and talk a little bit about how we invest, how we kind of look at investing in the industry as a whole, as well as where it's going, and maybe even a little bit of a deep dive into one of our favorite companies. Now, before we get into all of that, we may be talking about companies or investments, and all investments involve risks, so don't use any of this information and act upon it yourself. If you do want financial advice, please reach out to us so we can give it to you personalized to your specific situation, but don't take anything we say and go for it. So, Nick, you started a video game group at our firm. We're obviously, talking a lot about investing in this new digital era. How did you get into gaming, and why did you decide to start this group?
So I got into gaming when I was pretty young. As I think a lot of people that get passionate about gaming, they grow up doing it. The first video game that I ever played was Diablo, which is from Blizzard back in the day. And I just grew up loving mostly PC games, but I also play a lot of console games as well. So, getting into this industry, we focus a lot on our investments on trends. And one big trend that we've been seeing, especially in the last few years, has been the shift to gaming and what that means for our economy and things like that. So, I figured it was a great merge between what I'm passionate about and what we invest in, and finding out more about different companies and the way they do business and things like that. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we, here at GK, we invest in major themes, and video games is just one of those. Technology is another major theme of ours. These work from home stocks have been another major theme, as well as like renewable energy, EVs, 5G, cannabis. So the way we look at these is a very top down approach. So we think that these themes, like video games, are major driving forces on the economy over the next 3, 5 plus years. And then while we have that theme, we break it down into different companies. And so now video games specifically, the industry is very unique as far as they have publishers, they have studios. Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. So the developers are the studios that physically go in there, make the game, figure out what kind of vision the game is going to be all about, while the publishers are more on the financial side, where they do all the advertising for the game, distributing the game, things like that. So it's a combination of effort between both of them. But you have companies like Activision that helps create the games like Call of Duty or Overwatch through Blizzard, and then they distribute the games to their publishing arm. And then you have other companies that, say, for example, are like Microsoft, where they have the actual hardware of Xbox, but then hire developers to make games specifically for that console.
Gotcha. And so who are the bigger players in the industry? You mentioned, Activision and Microsoft. I know there's a couple other companies that we like.
Yeah, so there's quite a few companies within the whole space, between very large kind of dominant players to smaller indie studios that make great games as well. But the bigger ones that are publicly traded, you have your Electronic Arts, which is known for their sporting like FIFA, Madden. They also have Battlefield, things like that. And then you have Activision, which we just talked about, which is one of my favorites because of their diversification that they have throughout their games. They have the Call of Duty franchise, they have the Overwatch franchise. With the acquisition of King, they have Candy Crush and mobile games these days. And then you have players like Sony that make the PlayStation, but they also have a lot of publishers underneath them that make their games, such as Last for Us and things like that. Then you have really old studios like Nintendo that has Pokemon, League of Zelda. You have companies like that, and there's a whole a wide array of different genres of video games, but also publishers and developers.
Yeah, even when you were just going over these, it kind of made me think of the legacy that a lot of these big companies have with the games that they actually produce, right? Like you mentioned a few names in there, like Call of Duty, like Zelda, like Pokemon, like all these games are have the this IP property that's worth so much and has been developed over like decades of time. It's not something that necessarily like just popped up, like Fortnite, for example, who's been a major hit and came out of nowhere. I mean, these games have like a huge history.
Yeah, and I think that's key, especially in the gaming world, is people live and breathe that one franchise, whether it be World of Warcraft, that game's been out for 15 plus years now, and it still has a huge following. Or Pokemon, you saw with the mobile game that came out, people were in the streets walking around just trying to find Pokemon because they had that nostalgia of growing up playing their Game Boy, finding Pokemon. And so, that is the key to having a successful franchise, I believe, and having a successful development company, is finding a game where people will mass follow you, any type of game that you develop.
And it also seems like they've been trying to find new ways to like monetize these franchises too. Like Take-Two, for example, we saw that they're gonna add a $10 charge to that new Kobe Special Edition NBA game as well, right?
Yeah, and that's interesting because it's usually $60 is kind of the standard, hey, I'm going to go buy this game for $60 and play it. Now they're talking about raising the price by $10. But if you look, it hasn't been a big price increase over the last 10 years in those type of games anyway. So, that $10 price increase is just inflation. But, gamers are very sensitive to price discrepancies within their games, whether it be the free-to-play model, which you just go on, play, and then buy in-game either cosmetics or things like that to boost your character, or buy the game and then play.
It doesn't seem like gamers like a lot of change sometimes, even though there has been a lot of change in the industry. Like there, has been this consolidation, like Activision obviously buying Blizzard, Tencent bought Riot, and we actually deal with a lot of clients at the firm, and Nick obviously has his group too, because when these transactions happen in the industry, a lot of the times the employees have stock options, RSUs, ISOs, and that's a lot of what we help them with at the firm, is being able to maximize those resources that they were given. And a lot of the times, a lot of these developers or a lot of the people that work for these industries too, a lot of their compensation is tied to bonuses on how well these games do, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And they get the stock compensation to them. And what I found is that a lot of these clients of mine, and also people that I've spoken with, they're younger. A lot of times they're in their 20s, 30 years old, and they've gotten a huge amount of stock options, and they don't know what to do with them. And how can you either diversify out of them strategically, or making sure that they maximize this opportunity that was given to them from their hard work, that they've worked years on some of these games and developments in these companies to be successful.
Now, out of all this evolution in the industry, is there anything specifically that you are most excited about? Like, the push towards digital, there's been obviously Battle Royale that's popped up, the microtransactions, anything that you're most excited about?
I feel like the creativity of development over the last couple of years has expanded as people and technology has developed. I think having more developers out there that have more free range gives more insight on their imagination, I would say. And I think that's the most exciting thing, is how much people can develop the games, but also with the digital economy moving forward, their dispersion of the game, I would say, through people that maybe didn't have access before. And you can see it even in mobile games these days. A lot of companies are pushing their mobile games, whether it be Diablo with Immortals, or you have Call of Duty now going on mobile that I believe reached over 250 million people. It just allows people with advances in technology to have access to these games that didn't have it before.
250 million people. That's so many people.
That's a lot of people.
And I really feel like over the past couple of years, video games has gone from like a niche thing to like more mainstream, just across the entire population. And like at this point, it's a social media, right? Like it's a social media. You're having concerts in Fortnite, you have cross-branding and in-game advertising, you even have like Discord, which if you guys don't know what Discord is, maybe Nick can explain it a little bit more. It's a bunch of mini channels.
Yeah, so Discord is a service that allows you to communicate with a wide variety of people within your one single Discord channel. Think about like Slack, where you have a company where everyone's on the certain channels and you kind of just throw information on there that pops up. I, as a streamer or as just a gamer in general, could have a Discord channel where all my friends could be on there. I could see who's on playing these different games and say, hey, let's play together, and then link up on voice communication to play games together, which before was really, really tough to do that.
Yeah, Discord's just been growing like crazy, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be like video game things too, like you mentioned. And so it's almost like what, Mark Zuckerberg was really intending to do with all of the Facebook groups, right? They're really like localized communities that are really like focused on a passion that they really care about, and so that they can communicate about without necessarily, talking to the outside world about it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see because, one of my buddies is a streamer, and they have movie nights. So it doesn't really have to do anything with, obviously, gaming, but their community gets on all together, and one person streams a movie on Discord, and then all watch it together. So not only, with this kind of whole COVID-19 shutdown, they're not together anymore, but they're also together now through Discord watching movies and things like that. So it's bringing that community vibe that I felt like, that is a shift to more social media.
Gotcha. And, looking ahead at the industry, there's a few new consoles that are about to come out. Have you, kind of gone over any of those? I know that, Xbox literally just yesterday before we recorded this was just released like the 20 new games that they want to put out, including Halo, which I'm most excited about. I know you're a PC guy, but I'm an Xbox guy myself.
I mean, I think everyone's excited for Halo just because of, the history and like we talked about earlier, the IP that's involved in Halo. It's one of the ultimate brands out there. But there is a lot of information coming out this year when the consoles are going to be released, what the pricing is going to look like. Are they going to be all digital downloads on the consoles? Are they going to have a spot for the CDs? There's a lot of questions that in the next couple months we should know. But I believe everyone's excited for the new consoles, whether you're a PlayStation player, an Xbox player, or even a PC player that plays occasionally on console. There's a lot that gets involved in having these big super cycles to have new consoles, and that just springs more development and more jobs really for creators to have an opportunity to create.
So with all these new consoles coming up, do you think that the technology will ever get good enough that we eventually won't need these?
I think eventually. I don't think the time is here just yet. There's just a lot of complications with having everything on cloud-based with latency lag and things like that. But I definitely think it's interesting what Google is trying to do, and I believe that if they can be successful in it, that will just open up the market as a whole for the gaming community up to a lot of new markets that doesn't have an opportunity right now to play video games, whether it be places that have less internet access that basically can run a smartphone, that can't run a PC or a console. So there's just gives you more opportunity and more gamers that can be involved in the community.
So with this new digitalization, 5G is another major theme of ours that kind of went hand in hand with video games, and it's going to not only just change the video game industry like you mentioned forever around the world, but also a lot of other things like self-driving cars, and we just got to actually get there and get the infrastructure into our country. I mean, last year we were so just hyped about it and just excited about rolling it out, and obviously this pandemic has shifted that, and it shifted a lot of things. Especially how companies are advertising their video games and reaching not only millennials, our generation, but also the generation behind us, Gen Z, who are going to be, even bigger, even more obsessed with video games and probably have a bigger pocketbook at some point. So, what are some creative ways that companies are advertising during this era?
I mean, I think the biggest one that has been in the recent era of just digitally advertising has been Apex. They did something interesting that a lot of companies have never done before, is they use streamers to advertise their launch, and they didn't tell anyone they were launching, and all of a sudden all these streamers were playing Apex, and everyone's like, what is this game? What's going on? So using streamers through Twitch, and unfortunately, it used to be Mixer, that is no longer. But using these avenues that have a large, broad audience to attract people that are in gaming that have the potential to talk and communicate through things like Discord. Hey, have you seen this game? Hey, have you checked this out? Things like that. That was a really good strategy looking at the digital era, because it is tough right now, especially during this pandemic, to get advertising out there. Where are the eyeballs? Like you said, 5G definitely is the next big thing for smartphones and just internet in general. But where can people really find the direct to consumers? It's through the streamers right now.
And one of the other kind of marketing things that really stuck in my brain too was Activision when they did the pizza story. So they were tweeting out, if you tweeted to them, that they would basically just deliver a pizza to you while you were isolated playing Call of Duty all day.
Yeah, who doesn't like pizza? That's for sure. So that was a very smart move by them. All you had to do was retweet with a hashtag about the pizza, and you were putting to a drawing that potentially you could get some pizza. So just little things like that creates a buzz and creates that need. So.
And do you think that all of this push to digitalization is truly helping them with their margins? How much do you think this is actually helping?
I think a ton, to be honest. I read a stat earlier that said in 2012, I believe, only about 17 to 20% of video games were downloaded digitally. And so looking back the last couple of years, that actually has shifted, kind of completely flipped over. So about 80% or so have been digitally downloaded. So you think about digitally downloads, what does that do for a company? If margins increase, that just gives them more money to reinvest into these amazing games to create more content for their users. So and not only digitally downloading helps the companies, it also helps the consumers and the gamers as well because of convenience.
Well, how am I supposed to get my $5 from GameStop when I turn it back in though?
GameStop has a lot of issues. You're just seeing it now with everything being shut down. GameStop has been struggling. Same thing with they're very similar to a Blockbuster, and Netflix took them over going all digital. So, it's just a shift in the environment, a shift in people's way they do business.
So do you think that more companies are going to go towards increased prices like Take-Two did with their inflation tactic, or do you think it's more of that freemium model like Fortnite, or a mix of both like COD with the microtransactions? Do you think that they're still figuring this out, or that one's more successful than the other?
I think they're still figuring it out and they're trying to tweak it. With that being said, which one is better? It's tough to say because you have to think of how much investment went into these type of AAA games, whether it be a Call of Duty or a Battlefield or, companies like that, a Borderlands. There's so much initial investment where, yes, if you went free to play, you could probably make that back in microtransactions over time. But, with them being a public company and having shareholders to answer to, it's tough to say, okay, this is the revenue stream we're going to get and do better estimates that way. So, it's a touchy subject. And I know there's been a lot of backlash with microtransactions starting back, I believe it was the Star Wars, the Battlefront 2 that came out that had all of the loot boxes and the microtransactions. And there's been a shift away from those because of things like gambling. And
yeah, I was going to say, kids are using this in-game currency to essentially gamble against each other.
Yeah, and it's a big controversy right now, and it's actually been heavily regulated through, people trying to pass bills to stop companies from doing it, but I don't think those are even going to pass. It's just tough.
Yeah, one revenue stream I've always thought that they've missed out on too is ads inside the game, right? And just an ad agency solely focused on that, I think would just clean up. But you mentioned, when we were talking about this, that a lot of people actually hate this.
I believe that there's good ads and bad ads. If I'm playing a video game, I play to escape kind of reality and kind of not focus on what's been going on. But if I have an ad, say for a Coca-Cola can that's next to me playing Apex, it just kind of brings me back to reality. And that's not what I'm trying to design to do. But if it's more, advertisement that I've not really seen, but kind of visually seen that's not really there, I don't have an issue with it, but I just can't see gamers liking too many ads, and they're just very sensitive as far as their games, what's in their games, and they don't want change really.
So more like a subtle, like subconscious hint rather than like an in-your-face huge Coke billboard on there.
Say for example, if Apex had their advertisements on those big banners, how many people would like to see an advertisement for Lululemon pants on something like that? It just wouldn't happen because it just takes away from the actual in-game content.
Yeah, well, I mean, as amazing as this industry is and how rapidly it's changing, it seems almost every single week, we help a lot of these video game clients navigate these changes, not only in the industry, but in their own financial lives. And so if you guys are in the industry or have questions about the industry or even want to get invested into some of these companies that we talked about today, please do reach out to myself or reach out to Nick. You can reach me at brett@gerberkawasaki.com.
You can reach me at nick@gerberkawasaki.com.
We're also on social media, posting a lot of these specialized contents, not only about video games, but other major themes, financial planning advice, investment, different just parts of what we want to teach you guys and what we're hearing that you guys want to learn about. So if you guys have also questions, feel free to send them in. But other than that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.